Hi everyone, my name's Tracy. I'm the Sunshine Coast representative for Australian Marine Conservation Society, and today I'm going to give a brief overview of three of our major campaigns. But our major campaign that we're running at the moment is Fight For The Reef, and you can go to www.fightforthereef.org and find all the information you need there and links to the Australian Marine Conservation Society, which for convenience I will call AMCS. So we've had a recent win with the shark situation in WA, where they have now said that they're going to stop putting out the drum lines and baiting and culling sharks, but they are going to continue to chase down any sharks that behave dangerously, which leaves it wide open really to interpretation. And then we also have the sustainable fishing campaign going on, and they've just come out with a great new app for smartphones and iPhones that you can get online now, and you can also purchase books and online. But our major campaign is the Fight For The Reef. So this campaign was actually started in the 1960s when there was a plan to mine the reef for limestone, and they successfully stopped that mine from happening then. So you might have seen the Queensland Government Reef Facts TV ad, which is partly true. Some of the threats that face the reef are runoff from agricultural and city land carrying pollutants and sediments that cover the reef. It's invaded by crown of thorn starfish and other invasive species, which is why we need to protect it from further threats, because it is already under threat. So the Great Barrier Reef is one of the largest living coral reef ecosystems on the planet, and it represents about 10% of the coral reefs in the entire world. And it's hosts an outstanding level of marine biodiversity and is considered the richest area in the world in terms of animal diversity, and is home to approximately 400 types of coral and forms of critical habitat for endangered species. And as one of the 7 wonders of the natural world, it attracts more than 1.6 million tourists every year and creates $6 billion worth of economy for Australia, which is more than mining, and creates 63,000 jobs, which is also a greater amount of employment than mining. So the newest threat for the reef comes in the form of the proposed port developments and the millions of tonnes of dredging and dumping to make way for over 7,000 coal ships going ploughing through the Great Barrier Reef waters every year. So, and there's about 7 megaports planned all along the Queensland coast, and some are already in practice, and some of the plans involve increasing the use of these ports. So that includes Gladstone, Mackay, Abbott Point, and other great big ports. So dredging involves cutting away huge swathes of the seafloor, scooping it up and relocating it somewhere else. So you might think, what's the problem with that? It's just seafloor, it's natural, it can't do any problem. But actually it's full of accumulated waste from hundreds of years of agricultural and industrial use of the land, and it's full of pollutants and toxins, and also the fine sediment covers the reef, and because the reef can't move and clean itself, it stops it from getting sunlight, and that eventually kills the reef and the seagrass and affects the animals that rely on the reef. So the dredging releases dangerous acid sulfate soils, heavy metals and algae, which kill marine wildlife. And once it's dumped, it doesn't just settle there, it tends to move and relocate again, and it can take many decades for it actually to settle again. So it will keep stirring for many, many years. So a study done by the Great Barrier Reef Marine Park Authority suggests that these sediments can drift up to 80 kilometres away from the dumping site, so it's certainly not contained to where they dump it. Okay, so the mining in Gladstone started in 2011, From May 2011 to September last year, they dredged over 21 million cubic metres of seabed and dumped that in a designated area within the Gladstone Harbour, and then surrounded it by a bund wall. Since then, there's been major catastrophes where that wall has failed and dredge has been contaminated the harbour. So this has led to a massive algae bloom within the Gladstone Harbour, which led to fish disease and fishery closures in Gladstone. And there's actually a lot of fishermen in Gladstone out of work at the moment and have had to leave Gladstone. It caused the release of heavy metals into the water and led to high turtle and dugong deaths after this event. There was also massive seagrass loss, and muddy harbour water that could be seen from space. So another number of incidents occurred. So there's again leakages of contaminated materials, oil spills from the ships and due to equipment failure, machinery malfunctions and human errors that caused millions of tonnes of dredge spoil to be dumped accidentally in areas they weren't meant to be. So Abbott Point is another one that's already in progress, but they plan to significantly increase that by about 4 times its current use. So they're planning to open the world's biggest coal mine and then build a railway from that coal mine to Abbott Point, where they plan to start. They store the coal on line and then build a big port out to the ferry terminal out to the port. So the plan is to go ahead with dredging 3 million cubic metres of seafloor, and they had planned to dump that at sea, but there's been recent media release that they're going to now not dump it at sea and dump it on land. But the problem is Abbott Point is surrounded by a big valley that is a huge wetland called Cayley Valley Wetland, and it's a significant wetland full of lots of wildlife, and it's an important process to. It stops the river sediments running into the ocean. So that's could possibly be a worse proposal, because it's not only going to destroy the wetland that it's dumped into, but it is going to eventually run back into the marine park anyway, so it's going to double the problem. So the impacts of the increased ships running through to the ports. So these port developments are going to require ongoing dredging to maintain them, because they do tend to fill in. And the number of ships is going to increase from about 4,000 to 7,000 and could go up to 10,000 per year. So the issue is there's an increased risk of accidents and oil spills and damage to the reef. But also these ships their hulls are coated in a chemical to prevent algae growing on them, which damages the reef. And impacts of this, the massive increase will have devastating impacts on wildlife, including turtles and dugongs. And recent studies have shown that the noise created by these ships also interferes with whales and other sea creatures' ability to communicate with each other, and can even harm them physically by causing chronic stress. And other risks can include introducing more marine pests from the ballast water, increased risk of oil spills, and ships running aground damaging the reef. So in response to these risks, the Australian Marine Conservation Society has joined with World Wildlife Fund Australia to start the Fight For The Reef campaign. And although it started in Queensland and spread to Gladstone, it's now throughout Australia and internationally. And in fact, the recent Abbott Point decision triggered a global outpouring of shock and anger in the media. And in response to that, in the last 18 months, the AMCS got over 2,000 more volunteers working for them. And about 200,000 or more people have signed our petition. So to get more involved in the campaign, you can join. We have a Facebook page, we have a web page, we have Twitter. You can, as always, write letters to your local, federal, state representatives asking them not to let this go ahead, and keep contacting the Liberal Party asking them not to let this go ahead. The page is www.fightforthereef.org.au. Okay, thanks very much.